What's good, folks? You're listening to Development and Shit, the pod that talks about the highs and lows of growth. Take a deep dive into life's lessons with a dash of humor with your hosts, Mell and B.
Welcome back to Development and Shit. It's your girl, Mell.
Hey, beloveds. It's your girl, B.
This is season 2, y'all.
Yep.
We had an amazing time creating meaningful content for you in season 1, and we can't wait to do it all over again, bigger and better.
It's going to be so good, y'all.
In our last episode, B and I shared our wins with you and the journey of creating our podcast. And let me tell you, the development and growing don't stop.
As it shouldn't.
We are definitely not the same women we were when we started, and we want to continue to cover topics that will add value to your lives. So when you look in the mirror, you say, damn, and are able to see how far you've come too.
Love it.
In this episode, we are going to discuss forgiveness.
Yeah, this is a much needed topic.
So go ahead, grab your coffee, your tea, your beverage, and a notepad while we take you to church. B, let's start off with what forgiveness is.
Well, let me start by saying that forgiveness is really not about the other person or a group of people who betrayed you or done or said something harmful to you. Forgiveness is really about you. It's about me. I know that forgiveness is easier said than done because rightfully so, we may feel that whoever is the offender, they're not deserving of forgiveness, right? But however, forgiveness to me is really extended grace for our frailty as a human race.
I really like that. Extended grace for our frailty. I think that's important because we are human and not without error, and we are at different levels of growth.
So true. I mean, it's like the law of reciprocity. I mean, there's literally 7.7 billion people on the planet Earth, and we are bound to fuck up one way or another. I mean, I've done so a lot for sure. And to be honest, the offenders really have already moved on with his or her or their lives, right? While we're stuck in resentment and the memories are just eating away at us.
Yes, the memories.
So why should we let them live while we die a slow death of shame, pain, and suffering?
It's crazy to think that we are suffering because we won't let it go.
Right. And unforgiveness holds a lot of unhealthy energy. And we all know the famous saying, hurt people hurt people. So it's really a vicious cycle. And we owe it to ourselves to be vulnerable enough to stop the vicious cycle, to forgive ourselves first, because that is definitely needed, and then forgive the offender. And that will allow the healing process to begin for all parties involved. I mean, I think that forgiveness is a form of maturity and self-love, really, because you allow yourself to relinquish that power that whoever the offender is has over you.
Ooh, that is a word. Maturity, self-love, and relinquishing the offender's power. You better preach.
You know I got a word, girl. So sometimes a person cannot forgive because they cannot forgive themselves for maybe putting themselves in situations to be mistreated or to be a victim.
I can definitely relate to that.
Yeah. And Will Smith, on his book tour of his self-titled book called Will, he said something that was really profound to me, that we don't forgive ourselves for stuff, and it makes it impossible for us to forgive other people. And it's extremely important for us to learn how to forgive ourselves, because what happens to us majority of the time is not our fault. And even if it was, I repeat again, we are human. We make mistakes due to learned behavior and a slew of other contributing factors. So I say forgive so that you can be forgive, because you would want that extended same level of grace. What about you, Mel? What is forgiveness to you? Tell the people.
Well, my understanding of forgiveness is releasing negative emotions towards a person or situation that was hurtful or harmful. Mm-hmm. It means to no longer hold an offense over someone. You let go of anger, resentment, and hard feelings towards that person. Now, the dictionary, I gotta go to
we know you gotta go to the dictionary.
Yes, I go to Merriam, I go to all of them. But the dictionary says it means to pardon someone from an offense that occurred or release a person from the liability of something they did. I think for me, the main thing about forgiveness is not harboring anger or hate or ill will about a person who harmed you in some way.
I totally agree.
I don't think it's excusing their behavior, but it's more or less releasing yourself from the negative emotions of the offense in a healthy way. I've basically grown to understand it is okay to feel the feelings of anger, disappointment, hurt, whatever emotions may come up, but it's counterproductive to hold on to those feelings or sit in them for too long.
Definitely true. It's like it's eating away from you, from your soul, like critters just eating.
Yeah, ain't nobody got time for that. For a while, I had a misconception that when you forgive someone, you still continue in whatever relationship you had. And I had a colleague gift me a wonderful book that added to my forgiveness journey. It's called Forgive for Good by Dr. Fred Luskin.
Oh, wow. Actually, I remember you saying that you read that book. I think I need to add that to my collection just for not for me, but for others. No.
Our collection is growing.
I love it.
Exponentially. I want to share a couple nuggets from his book to highlight what forgiveness is or what it can look like. I think most of us, we've heard that forgiveness is for us. It's not for the other person or the offender, which talked about. And I totally agree with that. Forgiveness is for our own personal healing. Dr. Luskin said, forgiveness is taking back your power, taking responsibility for how you feel, not being stuck in the victim role. And it's a choice. At the end of the day, forgiveness looks like peace to me. It looks like me believing what people show me about themselves. It looks like creating boundaries, not telling my grievance story over and over again, or reliving the painful experiences, and not taking things so personal. We've shared with you all what forgiveness is and what it looks like. Let's talk a bit more about what it ain't. B, what are some of the misconceptions and myths about forgiveness?
So as I stated before, that the misconception of forgiveness is not about the offending party or parties, but it's about you. Okay. So it's not about the person who offended you, y'all. It is really about yourself for us. There's also a misconception that when you forgive, you have to accept what the offender has done to you. I've heard this. And that you are somehow allowing the said party to not have any accountability. And that couldn't be further from the truth. I mean, that's crazy. I can forgive you and still believe that you're accountable, that you should be held accountable for your wrongs, right? For the wrong things that you've done. And I can also forgive you and still decide that I'd rather not engage with you any longer. And to be honest, depending on the circumstances, it's really healthy for you not to put yourself back in toxic relationships or positions to be hurt again.
Yeah, that's what I have learned most recently about forgiveness, as far as not putting yourself back in those toxic relationships.
So true. I mean, I used to say, so this is kind of funny, I think. Anyway, I used to say that I forgive someone to the point, y'all, just, religion and all the other stuff that compounds, to the point that if they were hanging off a side of a cliff, that I would save them. I would reach out to them and I would pull them up because I forgive them. However, I believe now, and this may sound harsh, but honey, you hanging off the side of that cliff is none of my concern. Okay. And what if I try to help them and then they pull me with them and I myself end up getting pulled down and die? That's crazy. So I believe the former was a byproduct of my savior complex and wanting to save everyone but myself. So I'm not helping you off the cliff. I forgive you, but that's between you and baby Jesus, right? And another misconception that I've heard is that after forgiveness, you have to automatically somehow trust that person or people again. The hell you do. How, Sway? How? You are in a relationship, right? And, your person, whoever you're with, your partner, they cheat on you. And after that, you decide to forgive them. And they say stuff like, why don't you trust me no more? I mean, that's crazy. What you mean, why I don't trust you? Because, fool, you took advantage of my trust, right? You are the same person that betrayed my trust. And you think that you just going to get it back at a blink of an eye? Nah, that ain't how that go.
Yeah, I think people have to realize when harm is done and that everything just does not return to the way it was. That's not how it works.
That is not how it works. And I think another misconception is that you have to forgive the same offense over and over again. Now, look. I believe that I can forgive you once. I think President Bush, ex-Bush said, he said, I can forgive you once. The second time, shame on you. Now, the third time, you not getting no more forgiveness. God dog it. That's between you and baby Jesus. Yeah, I'm not going to forgive you. And lastly, a myth is that forgiveness is a weakness, that you become a sellout because you've forgiven a wrong. And I actually believe that makes you stronger and more powerful because you decided to release the hurt and the bitterness and all the other negative emotions that come with being betrayed by someone. So you can continue your journey of healing and ultimately live the life that you deserve ultimately.
Yeah, no doubt.
So what misconceptions do you have in your repertoire?
Whew. Well, I had some real misconceptions about forgiveness and what that meant in terms of how I dealt with the offender. However, I now know that just because you forgive someone, that does not mean you have to continue to have them in your life. Some other myths I want to bust out there are based on what I learned from Dr. Luskin. Like, forgiveness does not mean you have to reconcile with the person who caused you harm. It is not excusing poor behavior or condoning unkindness, and it does not mean that you have to forget.
Baby, I may forgive, but I will never forget.
Never. Learning these truths really has been life-changing. In my codependency, I reconciled with people who hurt me, and I made excuses for toxic behavior. But y'all know, baby, if y'all was listening to that other episode, baby, no more, okay?
It's a new season, baby. Season fried chicken, no.
Girl, But understanding that I can forgive and move forward with or without a person, depending on the offense, of course, is empowering. So you mentioned kind of like the whole religion thing earlier. Being raised in the church, we are taught forgiveness from a young age. So I always wanted to forgive. I try very hard not to hold on to anger or hold grudges, which I think is good, but not to the point of denying your own experiences and your feelings. And that kind of goes back into the savior complexes that I talked about and you talked about earlier. It's not my job to be on the cross, bearing everybody's sins and trying to save everybody. It's not my job.
None.
Okay? I'm giving it up. It's not my job.
I don't want to be on the cross.
Do not at all. But basically, I've learned that I'm allowed to feel my feelings. I'm allowed to experience whatever pain that comes, and I am not forgiving people because they need to be forgiven, but because I need to be able to continue living my life in peace and harmony with myself.
Wow.
Yeah. Girl, growth. And holding on to grievances is unhealthy for me and keeps me in bondage. Okay. And there are times you may be offended and never get an apology. And you have to be okay with non-closure. That's tough. But I mean, what you gonna do? You know what I'm saying? And in that situation, that person is going on with their life and you're still stuck. So for me, forgiveness is about personal freedom.
Wow. You done said a whole mouthful. I mean, to piggyback off of what you just said, Mel, which was powerful as hell. Forgiveness is about personal freedom. And I know for myself that I want to live in a state of freedom. That's mental freedom. That is personal freedom. You know, all that. My heart, I want everything to be free and in a higher state. And unforgiveness kept me locked up in a state of unrest. So my thoughts became loop and became actions. And what I focused on the most, my subconscious mind actually really started to respond to that.
Girl, you need to run that back. Okay. First of all, loops. Yeah, I know about a loop, getting caught in a loop. But what you said about what you focus on the most, your subconscious mind will respond to. And that is so true. And y'all got to keep up with us in all these episodes because we've talked about the power of the subconscious mind.
Yes.
And all of this is related, honey. Very much. And energy goes where attention flows. So if you're giving something too much attention that you don't want, you are basically amplifying the energy. So we got to really be mindful about that.
Yeah. And so what I began to start manifesting because of not forgiving myself, it wasn't pretty. It showed up in me not taking care of myself. I didn't think highly of myself. It was the way that I spoke to myself. I found myself in dangerous situations sometimes, you know, and I just continued to relive the offenses of my offenders. And I blamed myself a lot for what happened to me. I would say stuff like I was in the wrong place at the wrong time, or maybe I said something that gave them the wrong idea about me, or I should have never drunk that or smoked this. I mean, I basically put all the blame on myself, and I really could not forgive myself. You know, it was like an inkling of just, you know, like, how do I reconcile this? And so, it just became just crazy.
I think a lot of us tend to do that, to blame ourselves, especially women. I don't know why, but I think it's like a natural inclination for us to blame ourselves.
Yeah. And it's trauma, it's tragedy. And I almost want to say it's unfair, you know, and I knew that it wasn't my fault. But like I said, there was still something in the back of my mind that said, as I said earlier, forgiveness takes time. It's not something that just happens overnight. But once I did forgive myself, baby, it allowed me the freedom to choose a healthier life, choose not to stay in a victim mindset and have the woe is me attitude. But